President Joe Biden announces the federal government will help with more than 10,000 testing sites and will mail free at-home COVID tests due to the explosion of COVID-19 infections by the rapidly spreading Omicron variant. Take a look.
The federal government will purchase 1/2 billion, that's not million, billion with a B, additional at-home rapid tests with delivery starting in January.
And joining us to talk about this and much more are Congressman Casten, a Democrat from Downers Grove, Congressman Bill Foster, a Democrat from Naperville, and Congressman Krishnamurthi, a Democrat from Schaumburg. And we invited all the Republicans in Illinois' congressional delegation, but none accepted our invitation tonight. And we thank you all for joining us once again. Representative Krishnamoorthi, I'll start with you. The president is going to mail about 500 million at-home COVID tests to citizens next month. Is this urgent enough given the astonishing spread of Omicron right now?
I think that it's a good measure. It's something that we need to do. I quite frankly would have liked to have seen it a little earlier, but more than that, Paris, I think the big missing piece of the puzzle here, which I have emphasized before on this program, is we have yet to undertake a significant global vaccination campaign. 3 of my relatives died in India due to Delta. And at that time, I had initiated legislation to appropriate a lot of money to help vaccinate the rest of the world, a modest amount compared to the economic chaos it's wreaked on the United States and other places. We didn't do that. Delta came here. Now Omicron has come. And we're just inviting the next Greek-lettered variant to do the same. And we've got to learn our lesson and help to vaccinate those underserved who can't get vaccinations on their own.
And our condolences to your family, Congressman. Representative Foster, does there need to be a more robust campaign from Congress and the federal government on booster shots right now?
Yeah, well, I think every one of us goes home every weekend and says, how are we possibly going to do what we can to convince the people we represent to get fully vaccinated and boosted? That's the single most important part of our job right now because of the lives that get saved. And everyone is looking very carefully at how Omicron will progress in different countries. And the thing that we really have to keep our eye on is whether or not it's going to overflow our hospitals. Because if that happens, then we're going to be right back where we were and having to have mandatory shutdowns and so on. So far, the news is not all bad in England, in Denmark, and in South Africa so far. But despite a huge increase in case numbers, we're not seeing the overflows of the hospitals and particularly the emergency rooms and the ICU.
Perhaps a milder disease or some of the vaccination numbers showing. Representative Casten, as you know, Mayor Lightfoot announced mandatory vaccination for anyone wanting to enjoy most indoor activities like restaurants, bars, or gyms. Will that be an effective mitigation?
I hope so. To the question you asked, Congressman Foster, what do we do about that recalcitrant group of people who aren't getting vaccinated? We're about 70% of Illinois is now vaccinated. And Congressman Krishnamurthi is right. We will not stop the evolution of this virus until everybody's vaccinated. There's that subset of people who are distrustful of the health system, and I think we can work as a public health measure to get them comfortable, to get people who, are trusted emissaries to, make them feel comfortable, and whether that's religious leaders or otherwise. But there's that separate subset who just sees this as having been politicized. And what we've seen is the best way to get that population vaccinated is through mandates. The military has been effective with that. United Airlines has been very effective. And I think we've consistently seen, number one, that once people get vaccinated, they realize it's pretty awesome to not be sick.
Congressman Casten, does that mean there could be more mandates coming from the federal government?
I think to the degree that people have the statutory authority to do it, we may have to. But obviously that depends. The federal government can mandate the military. The federal government doesn't have jurisdiction to mandate every private employer.
What about air travel?
I'm going to defer to smarter legal minds than myself on that, but I would urge everybody who's listening, this is not about you. You do not know if you are sitting next to somebody who's immunocompromised. Maybe they've just gone through an organ transplant. Your decision to not get vaccinated, unless you're under doctor's orders not to do that, is literally killing people. So, look out for the greater good, look out for the people you love, look out for your strangers, and that's how we're going to get through this together.
All right, Representative Krishnamurthy, I want to move on to
President Biden, if I
go
could,
ahead,
President
Congressman
Biden was
Foster.
right to bring up the fact that this is a duty to your country. If you look at what the risks that people were asked to take when they were drafted for World War II, for Korea, for Vietnam, they were asked to take a significant personal risk for the welfare of our entire country. And the risk that you're being asked to take, to this minuscule risk to get yourself vaccinated for a threat that has killed far more people than World War II, is a reasonable thing for everyone to expect of an individual in this country.
All right, Congressman Krishnamoorthi, I want to move on to the Build Back Better bill. As you know, Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia announced over the weekend that he's out, although the president is insinuating, well, maybe he might go back into negotiations next year. What's your understanding is the status?
Well, interestingly, after his Fox News interview, he went on West Virginia radio and he talked about the elements of the Build Back Better concept that he supports, such as universal pre-K, which is essential for bringing women back into the workforce, and it will help generations of people become better citizens. He also supports certain clean energy provisions and prescription drug price reforms, among other things. I think we have to take what he supports and negotiate with him and come up with a solution that moves our country forward.
And Congressman, I'll stay with you here. Does that mean that Democrats, yourself included, would perhaps be in favor of a standalone extension of the child care tax credit, which is expiring here, and this is $3,000 plus a year?
I would. I think that we would have to pay for it, but I think that that is something that a lot of people have benefited from. It's lifted tens of millions of children out of poverty, and it, again, really helps people to climb the economic ladder over time.
Congressman Casten, is there another avenue for some of the climate provisions in this Build Back Better bill that look like they won't make the final version if Senator Manchin gets his way?
Look, I think it's really important for us to understand that we do not have one problem in the Senate. We have 51 problems in the Senate. There are 51 senators who think that we do not have enough child poverty in this country, who think that people are paying too little for their insulin right now, who think that seniors shouldn't have hearing aids, and that climate change is not something worth our attention. The problem is that as long as the Senate keeps insisting on preserving the filibuster, we can't fix that except through reconciliation, that's the only process we have to get through with only 50 votes. And I think all these things are critical. I think we have got to deal with climate change. These are facts. And I'm extremely disappointed that Senator Manchin has tanked this process we're on.
Congressman
Foster,
Foster,
don't lose sight of the fact that there are 50 other senators who feel the same way.
And Congressman Foster, is there something in the House that would get the support of moderate and progressive Democrats that would also get the support of Senator Manchin, which would be much pared down from what's out there now?
Well, we will have two shots at reconciliation for the past fiscal year and the upcoming one. And so it may be that the right strategy here is to make the first pass with whatever minimal things we can get agreed to right now, the things that Raja mentioned here, that at least Manchin, since his Fox News appearance, has expressed some support for. And if we can get a small package that has that, get it passed, and then start working on a second one, that may be the best path forward. I'm personally enthusiastic about what was left on the cutting room floor in terms of scientific research, because that was initially part of the large 3.8 trillion and the money was essentially eliminated, despite the fact that in the House, we have had dueling bipartisan proposals to double the scientific research budget in this country, something that there is real bipartisan support for.
As a scientist, I know that's something close to your heart. We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you all. Happy and safe holidays to all of you. Our thanks to Congressman Casten, Foster, and Krishnamoorthi.
Thank you, Paris.
Happy holidays.